Hey everyone, my name's Dom, welcome back to the channel, and today I've got another tag video for you. We're going to be taking a look at the Robin Hobb tag, so let's go find out what answers I've got in store. So I was asked to do this tag by Stephanie from Ms. Richards Reads, who created the Robin Hobb tag itself in collaboration with Andrew and Niko, Lezlie and Angela. They've all got great channels of their own, and what I'll do, as well as Stephanie's original video and her channel, I'll link all of their channels in the description box below. Go check them out if you haven't already done so. With the tag being based on Robin Hobb's books, the questions do have their own relevance to some of the characters and settings from Robin Hobb's Realm of the Elderling series. I myself, I've only read so far the very first book in this expansive series, Assassin's Apprentice, so a lot of these names are unfamiliar to me, but that's not what it's about. It's about the question itself, and the name that's being given to the question is just to give it a bit of meaning if you do know the series. So again, as normal, what I'll do is link all the questions in the description box below, and that means there'll be timestamps so you can skip around to particular questions if you want to. So I'm going to try and make this a relatively quick fire video, so with that said, let's just dive into question 1 of the Robin Hobb tag. So that first question is titled The Skill, and it's what is my favourite magical ability. So obviously, reading fantasy, there is so much magic in the wide world of fantasy fiction, and this could be quite difficult to pick from. There are loads of spells that would really be useful if they were real. I would absolutely love a spell that could shrink things down, because I haven't got enough room in my house for loads of the things that are actually in my house. It'd be great to just shrink them down so I can put them all on a shelf or in a drawer and use that space for something else. But sadly, I'm not actually a wizard. Magic doesn't really exist, or if it does, people are doing a really damn good job of hiding it from us. To answer the actual question though, I'm going to go for a magic system that I've only recently come across, and this is thread weaving from the self-published series Threadlight by Zach Argyle. I've got dedicated reviews for both Voice of War and Stones of Light, the two books that are currently out for this series, on the channel. I'll link the cards up above, go check them out at some point if you haven't already done so. But I really like this magic system. There's two kind of key abilities, and if you can access Threadlight, you can do one or the other. There's essentially, to split them down to the base levels, there's a push and there's a pull power. And these give you abilities like being able to jump great distances or to run up walls and things like that. And it just sounds really cool. And I always forget which way around it is in my head. I think it's Sapphires, those with the blue eyes, who can do the kind of the push magic, and it's the one that really sticks in my head that I really like the idea of, is jumping from a great height and then kind of pushing off the ground a little bit to enable you to land safely. It kind of slows your fall. So I think that'd be really cool, and especially for things like the adrenaline seekers, you know, base jumpers and things like that, being able to jump and experience that thrill whilst knowing that you're actually safe and you're going to be able to stop yourself from coming to a very quick stop, because of course that's the part that hurts. Question 2 is Fitz, and this is a book that made me cry. Now, I've said a couple of times before in tags when this question's come up, I'm one of these people who doesn't really tend to cry at books. It's just not me, it's just not something that I do for whatever reason. Maybe I'm just cold, stone-hearted, I don't know. But there are a couple of times where I've kind of choked up a little bit, and one of those kind of instances that makes me do this is a really rousing speech, or something that is kind of more pride driven than sadness driven. And the one that really sticks out in my mind is towards the end of Tyrant's Throne, and hopefully this isn't going to be a spoiler for anyone. I'll try and keep it a little bit vague at least, but there's a scene towards the end of Tyrant's Throne where you've got the greatcoat Falkio, and he's got a greatcoat's coin, a Jorah's coin, in his hand, and he goes out to this crowd of people and he's trying to find out who this coin belongs to. Basically, it's one of his coins that he gave out at some point in his career as a greatcoat, and there is great meaning attached to this and to the way that it's reappeared and it's made its way back into his hand. And the whole thing where he goes out to this crowd and he asks, whose coin is this? And then people just start coming forward and saying, I've got a coin, I've got a coin. I've got one that was given to me by Kest, I've got one that was given to me by Brashen and by all these other greatcoats from history. And it was just a real kind of choke up moment for me. I absolutely love that kind of thing. And after going through the 3 books and nearly 4 books, because this is towards the end of book 4 of the greatcoats, it was just a real culmination of everything that I've experienced within those particular books, and I absolutely loved it. So that's one of the closest that I've got, I think, to crying from an actual book, but it's definitely that kind of scenario that's more likely to bring a little bit of a tear to my eye. Question 3 is The Fool, and here we're looking for a friendship or a friend group, and there's a few that I could go for here. I've answered this question previously and chosen the Companions of the Hall from R.A. Salvatore's Forgotten Realms works. I could also go for Kest and Brasti and Felkio from the Greatcoats, which is an absolutely fantastic example here, but I've just spoken about them. I'm also going to try and restrict myself to only mentioning a book or a series or a character a maximum of 2 times within this tag. But the one that I am going to go for here is, again, one of my old favourite kind of bromances of fantasy, and that is Royce and Hadrian from the Rhaenyra Revelations series. So I absolutely loved these books. They were great in terms of the banter between Royce and Hadrian, these 2 friends, and I just thought that really elevated the series. It was a great series, but that friendship and the interaction between Royce and Hadrian, what they do for each other as friends, really elevated it beyond where it was in the first place. So really love that one, and it's another one of my favourite series overall, but that friendship, those 2 characters, really do bring it to that kind of level for me. Question 4 is Althea, who is my favourite protagonist. Again, this is one that comes up quite a few times, so the 2 answers that I normally give are Druss from David Gemmell's Draenei series and Drizzt Do'Urden from R.A. Salvatore's Forgotten Realms. And I think where I've kind of ummed and ahed a few times between the 2 to see who is my favourite character, because that's kind of, to my mind, the same question really, and I think it is Drizzt that just comes out on top. That's certainly the answer that I gave last time this question came up in a tag video, so I'm going to stick with Drizzt Do'Urden. I absolutely love his stories. I love the kind of the backstory that you get in the kind of original Dark Elf trilogy, which is, if I remember rightly, Homeland, Sojourn and Exile. Not sure which order they're in actually, but I really liked that as kind of an origin story, and seeing how he came to possess, if that's the right term, Gwenwyvar, the little statuette of the panther who manifests into this, like, I don't know, 600-pound beast. So that's definitely one of the things that I really enjoy about this series, is having this kind of expansive story set over many decades, let alone years, but having that backstory as well, and being able to see the real origin story and looking around Menzoberranzan and how that shaped Drizzt and how he became the dark elf that he is, and that kind of the world of fantasy loves. Where he started out, his natural path would have been to take him down a very different direction. So I think he is my favourite character in fantasy, and I've got some more Drizzt books actually to read, so I'm going to be going back to his world and his story at some point in the future, so I'm looking forward to that. Question 5 is Ophelia, my favourite sassy character or funny book. And this one I maybe struggled with a little bit because it's not really my thing. I read epic fantasy and you don't really tend to get that, but at the same time you do have some which have got a good bit of light-hearted humour, and I definitely appreciate that within a book. I'm going to go here with actually the first book that I reviewed when I started my channel, which is The Black Tongue Thief by Christopher Buehlman. I really enjoyed Kinch Nashanach, the main character of that. I loved his humour. I could use that as an answer to this question, whether it's a sassy character, which would be Kinch, or a funny book, which would be The Black Tongue Thief. So you get it both ways. But I really enjoyed this book. I really enjoyed the humour. I liked the story. And I'm really looking forward to seeing where it goes in the future as well, because there's some really interesting elements in that one. I say really quite a lot, don't I? But there's some really interesting elements in this one, such as the tattoo magic, which is another one of those harking back to question 1, which I think is really cool the way it's handled within this particular story. Question 6, quite aptly, is the Six Duchies. What is my favourite magical setting? And for this one, I'm going to go with Raymond E. Feist's Midkemia. And I think the main reason that I'm choosing Midkemia is because the books that are set in Midkemia, there's so many of them basically. It's another one of these big expansive series. It's a bit like Robin Hobb's Realm of the Elderlings, where you've got a trilogy and a trilogy and another trilogy and so forth. And I think there's 7 or 8 trilogies or quadrilogies that make up this wider series, telling the kind of history, I suppose, of Midkemia, or at least of Pug and the people around Pug within this particular world. But because I've read so many of these and I've really got to explore it in great detail through these books, I really like Midkemia. I think it's so well thought out. I like the map. It's one of the first fantasy maps that I really got to see in my reading, so I love that. I've got kind of an affinity to it for that reason. But we see it in so much detail. We go into all of these many little places within this map, and you can just open it up at the front of the book and look at the map, and you can point out places and say, yeah, I've been there, I've read about this place. So I really like Midkemia. I think it kind of seems like a nice enough place. You know, some fantasy settings are really brutal, and you get that, obviously. You get war and kind of cutthroats and thieves and stuff in Midkemia as you would anywhere else. But as well as that, it also kind of seems like a nice place to live in comparison to a lot of other fantasy worlds. Question 7 is Nighteyes. Who is my favourite animal companion? And for me, there's only one place I can go with this. I will give credit to the named character from the question, the named companion of Nighteyes. I've not come across Nighteyes yet, so I can't really have the comparison. I know a lot of people say that Nighteyes is the best animal companion in fantasy, or it's between basically 2 of them, but I can't make that comparison myself, so I'm going for the other one that forms that argument quite a lot of the time, and that is Storm, the Wolven from my favourite series, The Faithful and the Fallen. I absolutely love this series, and just taking Storm out of the equation for a moment, I've said previously in written reviews that John Gwynne, I think, writes the best animal companions in fantasy today, and I'll stand by that through the 2 series that I've read completely, of Blood and Bone as well as The Faithful and the Fallen, and also from The Shadow of the Gods. He always incorporates animal companions. They're a little bit different in Shadow of the Gods, but they are there. And I really love the way that he really brings character to them, and he really gets you attached to these. And Storm is definitely one of the best for that. Obviously, Storm kind of stands out because of being the main animal companion, I would say, within The Faithful and the Fallen, but the storylines involving Storm and the way that you get attached to her, I just think are really second to none as far as animal companions go. Question 8 is Brashen. I think I've written that down correctly. And this is your favourite love interest. Now, this isn't really something that I look for in fantasy, and in epic fantasy, romance, it really does tend to take a back seat. You do have it, but it's generally just not at the forefront of a story. So I don't tend to come across what you would call love interests quite so much in the books that I read. I am going to go back to the Banished Lands again, 2 questions in a row for this one though, and I won't go into spoilers by saying whose love interest or anything like that, but I think for me it's Coralline, because I really loved her as a character. She's probably my second favourite female character from that series, because I love, however you want to pronounce her name, I love Cywin. I think she is great, but Coralline is right up there, just ever so slightly behind Cywin for me. A great character and a good love interest for the particular character who she is the love interest of. There you go. Question 9 is Kyle. Who is my favourite villain? This one, I've seen the name Kyle coming up quite a bit, so it's a really standard kind of our-world name, but apparently it's, I presume, a great villain in the realm of the Elderlings, so there you go. My answer for this one is really strange, because I read epic fantasy. I would kind of expect that there are loads of really great villains for me to be thinking of here, and I just can't think of any who really really stand out. So it was kind of weird when I was trying to answer this question, thinking, why can I not think of any absolutely amazing villains? But I just can't. Maybe part of that is because, there's always this kind of grey area and no one's true villain, and there's always these redeemable factors to them and things like that. Either way, that might come into my answer. I'm going to try to keep away from spoilers in this one, but my answer is going to be Thelric from Adrian Tchaikovsky's Shadows of the Apt series. I won't go beyond book one, purely because I know there's a lot of people who watch the channel who are reading The Shadows of the Apt at the moment. Yet another nod to the Library of Alexandria and the read along that's going on there right now. But I love Thelric as a character. He's one of my favourite characters from the series as a whole. And I think he's really, really interesting in book one. I wouldn't necessarily say he's true villain, like he's really evil or anything like that, but there's so many layers to him, and even in book one you can see that, and you can see some of those layers towards the end of the book starting to peel away as you get to know the character and what drives him and so forth. So I really like the character as a whole, and because he's definitely the villain from that first book, Empire in Black and Gold, that's the answer that I'm going for here. Question 10 is Kennit, a character or a book that I love to hate. Now, there have been times when I've kind of come across this love to hate thing and thought, that's not really me. I don't have anything that I love to hate in terms of fantasy. But actually I do, because I've said this a couple of times, mostly in Discord. I'm not sure if I've mentioned it on the channel or not, but I read many years ago a book. Shocker, I know. When I read Malice, I read Malice when it came out, sort of 2013, and when it came out there was another book that came out at about the same time, and I remember on Reddit there was a kind of comparison. There was a thread where people were saying these two books are basically the same, but this one is so much better than Malice. And I thought, I really liked Malice, so I need to read this other book and see what it's all about. And that book was The Red Knight by Miles Cameron. And do you know what? I did hate it. It's a strong word, and I really kind of dislike using it when talking about fantasy and reading and so forth. But I think I actually did hate it. And the reason I'm using it as my love to hate answer is because I read it so long ago, and I still talk about it quite passionately whenever it comes up. So it has really stuck with me. And if you catch me on the right day, and if you let me kind of get away from myself, I can probably rant about this book for a long time. So I think it does fall under that category of love to hate quite well. This, I thought, for a start, it was nothing like Malice. All of these people saying it's just like Malice but better, they're completely wrong. Not only because, in my opinion, it is nowhere near as good as Malice, but also it was nothing like Malice. They're both set in a fantasy world, and there's kind of early Britain connotations to the world, and that's maybe about as far as I'd go. But there are loads of people who love the Red Knight, and don't get me wrong, that is absolutely fine. I'm happy for them. It just doesn't work for me. That's how this whole thing works. People have different opinions. And my opinion of the Red Knight was, I really did not like it. There were so many things that just did not work for me. One of the key things was the resurrection trope in there, and it had to be the one character, out of many actually, but the one character I really did not like was the one who got bloody brought back to life after he eventually carked it. So that was good, and then it was really not good. There was borderline rape, and then there's a character who's so chivalrous because he didn't actually rape this woman, and that just doesn't work for me. You're not chivalrous because, oh, you stopped just before raping someone. You just don't do that in the first place. There's all these battle scenes, and every single time there's a battle scene, he just goes through this whole montage of putting on his armour, and it's just repeated time after time after time. And he walks around the castle, and you just got his sabatons ringing off the stone floor. It's just so repetitive, and I need to stop talking about it, because as I say, I can go on and on and on about this book, and that's not what we're here for, so I'll stop there. Done. And then question 11 is Vivacia. Vivacia? I don't know. This one is, though, my favourite character who is a sentient object. So that's a really specific kind of niche question. And when I was trying to find an answer to this one, there were only 3 that really came to my mind immediately, 3 kind of sentient objects in all the fantasy that I've actually read. I'm sure there are other ones, and you know, things like the One Ring, there's a level, a kind of degree of sentience within that, but the only ones I could really think of were the one sword that I can't remember the name of. Is it Nightblood? That sounds wrong, but Nightblood from Warbreaker by Brandon Sanderson, which was, yeah, it was okay, but not really memorable for me, so not that one. You've then got another sentient sword, Khazadea, aka Cutter from the Forgotten Realms, plays a part in some of the stories of Drizzt Do'Urden, and that one I thought was quite interesting because it was quite nice to see, because I said earlier these stories of Drizzt span decades. This sword kind of moves around a little bit and spends various amounts of time in different people's hands, so I thought that was quite interesting. But again, it's not one that really kind of resonates with me. So the one that I am going to pick out of the 3 of these is probably the one that I came across the earliest in my reading life, and that would be The Luggage from Discworld by Terry Pratchett. So this is a sapient pearwood trunk bought from a magic shop by Two Flower originally, who was looking for a travelling trunk. And of course it is a travelling trunk because it's a trunk that travels, not a trunk that you take on your travels. So the luggage has been described as half suitcase and half psychopathic maniac or homicidal maniac or something like that, because it's just absolutely nuts. It opens its lid and there's teeth and a tongue and, you know, the old eat people and belch kind of routine that you get in kind of comedic stuff like that. And then it's got human feet, hundreds of little human feet, so it just runs around the countryside kind of following its owner basically. So it's completely bonkers, but then so is so much about Discworld really. But the luggage just is the one that really stands out to me. It's not one that I remember talking, but it definitely kind of has feelings, which is the sort of definition of sentience. It has feelings, you can tell that it has hurt feelings sometimes and things like that. And, you know, all it wants to do is run around, follow its owner, but otherwise just go and create some mayhem. So you've got to have some kind of sentience to want to go around just charging through things and causing havoc, really, I guess. So there you have it, that was the Robin Hobb book tag. I'm not going to tag people specifically in this one because I don't know when this video is going to come out, and obviously there's plenty of people who might get picked and yet might get tagged in the meantime, so I'll avoid it for this one. Let me know in the comments below though what you thought of my answers, and if you've got any answers that I might have missed and that are a bit better than mine. If you like this video, do the usual like and subscribe business. I'll catch you in another video soon, I hope. But until then, as always, take care, read some good books. See you later.